Hi, this is Seth David from the world famous Nerd Enterprises Incorporated, bringing to you another special screencast. Happy Tax Day! This is our Tax Day screencast for 2011. Every year on Tax Day since 2009. That's all of 2 years. Well, this is really the third because I did one in 2009, one in 2010. You get the point. But every year I've done something on inventory. So we're going to do something on inventory today as well. Today we're talking about your products, your product lines, your profit margins. How do we analyze them? How do we stay on top of them? How to manage your profit margins on your product lines. Meaningful managers manage markups and margins. Say that with me 10 times really fast. Meaningful managers manage markups and margins. And what does that mean? It means if you're managing a business or owning a business, you're probably, if you own it, managing it, especially if it's a small business. And and if you sell products, then you want to manage your product lines. You want to be spending some time taking a look at what do I sell, how much do I pay for it, and how much do I sell it for. And we want to look at that. We want to expand upon that and say, what's my gross profit markup in terms of dollars and percentage? We want to look at all this information and use it to manage our product lines. A lot of times by looking at that information, we discover that A, we should raise our prices, B, we can call our suppliers or our manufacturers and negotiate costs with them, or C, that we might be able to do some manipulating on a particular order when a customer comes in and wants to place, let's say, a large order with us by saying, well, if we can get them to buy more, let's lower the profit margin, let's lower the selling price, but we'll make it up on the volume. We'll sell higher volume, so the dollar profit that goes into our bank at the end of the day will be more. And that's normal, and we're allowed to do that. We're allowed to drop the price for somebody based on volume, based on buying a larger quantity. I can lower the price for them. I have to charge the same price to everyone, and with that one exception, I can drop the price per unit for somebody as a reward for buying more. So that's what we want to do. And QuickBooks gives us some great reports that allow us to look at the information, that allow us to analyze what we have. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't give us a platform in which we can easily manipulate the information to see the outcome. So I don't want to sit there making changes to all of my items in QuickBooks only to find that I want to change some things back. It's handy to use a template like the one I'm going to show you today, which I've created, which helps you really easily manage and manipulate and update the information such that once we have everything in place the way we like it, we can go back and update QuickBooks. Or it might be that just for the one order that somebody's placing with us, we adjust our pricing. So we use this as the basis for invoicing that customer because we've said we know we're going to sell more and we're going to fix the prices based on that. So this is a template I've created that helps you do that very quickly. And what it does is it allows you to create or drop in a product list in the screen you're seeing here, and then we can move through 5 different scenarios that allow us to change different aspects of it such that we can see the outcome and we can figure out how exactly we want to price our products. And for that matter, how we can maybe negotiate, like I said, the cost of those products. So let's take a look at how this works. The first thing we'll do is, assuming you have a QuickBooks file and you want to analyze your existing product lines, we can use QuickBooks first, run a report, and drop it in here, which I'm going to show you how to do first. If you don't use QuickBooks or don't care to use QuickBooks because you just want to use this template the way it was really intended, which is just to look at a list of products for a specific order that we're getting from a customer in order to analyze them, then you can skip over the part I'm about to show you and go right to the next section, which will be on how to use this thing. So let's take a look here at a QuickBooks file. We want to go to Reports, we want to go to Lists, and we want to go to our item price list. And we come in here, unit of measure, get rid of. Preferred vendor, get rid of, don't need it. We have the price, we want to add in the cost, so we go to Modify Report, come down here, add in our cost, OK. We want to move the cost so that it comes before the price. So if I move my mouse over the word cost, you'll see it turns into a hand. I can click to grab that and drag it over. You'll see the red arrow pop up, which lets me know I can let go of my mouse button and drop it in that position. So now I've got my cost before the price. And one more thing I want to do in order to, before I export this, which is I want to go to Modify Report, choose my filters. I want to filter for the item. And I want to filter all inventory and assembly items. I'm not interested in looking at service items here. I'm only interested in looking at items that I charge a markup on, like products. Now I can go export. And when I'm exporting, if you've ever used one of my other templates, then you already know this. Make sure this option is not checked off. The default is that it is, where it says space between columns. Uncheck it and click export. And at this point, you should have two Excel spreadsheets open. One will be the export you just did. The other will be the template. Now, we've got our export here, and we're ready to take a look at our template. So the template, this is the product list sheet, which, as I mentioned, if you were skipping the previous part, now we're all cut up because you're going to come in here if you're not using something from QuickBooks and start entering your products here. If you're using the QuickBooks export, you're simply going to come into what you've exported, go right under where it says item here, Control Shift and a down arrow will highlight the entire range all the way down to the last product. Holding down Shift and pressing the right arrow 1, 2, 3 times will get the rest of the range highlighted across to the right. Press Control C to copy. Control Tab to open or to flip back over to the margin calculator, and we want to paste the values. If you don't paste values specifically, you're going to bring the formatting in from the export and you're going to overwrite my gorgeous formatting here on my template. So make sure you paste the values, and now we've got our product list in place. So either way, we're caught up here with one another. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is come into scenario 1, and if you're doing this to analyze your products in QuickBooks, then you can drop the whole entire product list from there. You can just copy and paste it from here, right in, and drop it into your product list. And we'll just do it real quick. Paste the values again so you don't overwrite the formatting, and you'll want to set your quantity on every single item to be equal to 1. Because the other columns won't calculate without a quantity in there. Everything's being multiplied by 0 if you don't have at least 1 in there. So if you just want to analyze your products for the purpose of making sure that you have what you need in QuickBooks, that your gross profit margin percentage is where you want it to be, that your markup percentage is where you want it to be, for that matter, then you can just drop the whole product list in, and you can really just analyze it right here. You only need this first scenario. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to show you an example of how you would do it if you wanted to just analyze specific products. In particular, if your intention was to develop the information you need for a particular order, for a customer who is coming in and placing a large order where you want to say, all right, let's look at that. So what I've done is I've set this up such that once you've populated the product list over here, you come into scenario 1, which is the only scenario where you can actually change the product information. You click this drop down. At first it looks blank because Excel by default takes you to the bottom of the list. But notice the scroll bar here. You can scroll all the way up to the top by clicking and dragging it, or just clicking on the arrows at either extreme, and you can choose a product. So let's pick one. Let's just pick one to keep it simple. Let's say we want to sell this product, this NAD, whatever it is. It's from the sample company. And let's say I'm looking at selling 1,000 of these. And I like this because the numbers are nice and simple. We've got a cost per unit of 10, a selling price per unit of 20. So for 1,000 of them, total cost is 10,000, total selling price is 20,000, gross profit dollars 10,000. Our profit margin is 50%, our markup is 100%. Now, what this scenario calculator does is it lets you look at this in different scenarios. And what I mean by that is right now, in scenario 1, I can change the quantity, the cost per unit, or the selling price, whatever's in the orange. Notice up here we've got kind of a map that lets you know within each scenario what things can be changed. If you see the scenario highlighted in that column, it means that column can be changed in that scenario. So let's look at scenario 1 first of all. This is typical where, as you've seen, you can enter the quantity, the cost per unit, and what you want to sell it for. Now let's go to scenario 2 and see what that lets us do. Scenario 2 is to assume that the customer has a set budget. So now that we've dropped in our information, we know the customer is only willing to spend so much on this, or only has a budget for so much. So you want to be able to change the total sale and the gross profit dollars to see what the quantity has to be. So ultimately the goal here is to see what do I have to change the quantity to meet with that customer's budget. So the assumption here is I'm not willing to budge on price. I just want to change the, or maybe I'm willing to budge on price, because as you can see I can change that here too. But I can also see what does my gross profit have to be in order to meet his budget. So if he's told me his budget for this is only $18,000, well then it's pretty simple. I can drop my total selling. Now remember, whatever I drop here, it assumes everything else stays constant. So if I drop my total selling price to $18,000, but my gross profit's going to stay the same, then the only way to do that is to sell fewer of them. I can only sell him 800 of those. But if he's come in and says, no, I need 1,000 of them, and I can only spend $18,000, then obviously my gross profit, I have to eat that difference here. So I change the gross profit. Now my quantity comes back to 1,000, and notice you'll see my profit margin has gone down. Now, let's say that we decide, okay, I don't want to go with that scenario. I want to see how else I can change this to make this work, because I really don't want to only have a 44% profit margin or only an 80% markup. Well, the first thing we can do is we can reset this back to whatever information was pulled from scenario 1 by clicking these reset buttons. Reset S2 all the way here to the left will reset the entire scenario, set everything back so it's equal to scenario 1. In other words, it'll change these orange columns back to what they were in scenario 1. I can reset one individual column. So if I know I've changed the price, I can reset the price and say, okay, let's take the selling price back to 20,000, and if I'm willing to accept a gross profit of 8,000, then I can sell him 1,200 of those, assuming I could get his budget up to the $20,000. I can reset the profit here. And of course, it takes everything back exactly the way it was. So let's say we decide this isn't how I want to approach this. Let's go to scenario 3 and say, and of course, by the way, all of these I've set so that you could change the cost per unit, because the theory is at any given time you may want to call up your suppliers and try and negotiate a lower cost. Because if I can get my supplier to come down on cost, then I can drop my selling price and still make the same profit. So you can start to see how this scenario calculator really can help you analyze your information and look at it from every possible angle to determine what's the best way to make this work. I want the sale. How do I make it work? Scenario 3 says you've invested a certain number of hours in this deal, and you want to make sure that the gross profit is enough to cover your time. So it lets you change the gross profit, the quantity, or the cost per unit. So I can say here, you know what? I want to make sure that I've spent 15 hours on this, and I want to make sure that I get at least $150 an hour for the 15 hours I've spent. So my profit on this, my gross profit needs to be $2,250. And if I can do that, selling a quantity of 1,000 at a cost of 10, then I can make this deal work for a lot less than what he was talking about. So obviously we're talking about, raising the price substantially from here. But the idea is the same. Is I want to be able to say in scenario 3, I want to be able to set, this is what gross profit I need to make on this deal in order for it to be worth my while. So obviously it would be more than $150 an hour, or it would be more than 15 hours, however we'd want to look at it. But I just threw that out there without really thinking it through. So let's just say I want to make sure that I am making at least, let's reset this, we'll reset the profit. Notice, and scenario 3 pulls from scenario 2. Each one builds upon the previous one. So if scenario 2 has been changed, scenario 3 will be up to date with whatever changes we made in scenario 2. And when I reset it, it's going to take it back to being equal to scenario 2. Very important to understand this. So that if I really want to start over, I have to go back to scenario 1, choose reset all. That will go through every single scenario and make sure everything is set equal to the previous all the way back to scenario 1. Then I can go back into scenario 3 and say, okay, initially my gross profit is $10,000 on this, but he needs it to come down to $18,000 total selling price. So I can go to $8,000 and see what does that do to my profit. We saw this already in the previous scenario, but this is another way of getting at it. Is I just say, you know what, I'm willing to accept gross profit of $8,000 and make a little bit less because I want the business. On the other hand, I can reset this and call up my supplier and say, hey, you know what? I need you to, I'm getting a big volume order here. I need you to come down on price for me. I need you to come down to $8,000 for me, or to $8 a unit for me, rather. So then the cost is less, and now I can come down to the $8,000 over here, and now I've got my gross profit margin, my markup are in place exactly where I need them to be. So in this case, I accomplished it by negotiating with my supplier. So let's reset all this. And let's take a look at scenario 4 and see what scenario 4 does for us. It says here, same idea as scenario 3, but this time we want to use the gross profit in terms of a percentage to get the desired profit. So it says just that. So it's the same scenario, but instead I want to change the percentage. I don't want to deal with dollars, but I know that in my mind I need to be making, at least 45%. So if I go 45%, does that accomplish what I need? Well, it's a little higher, but maybe for an extra $200 I can tell him no problem. That he can do it. Or I can say, you know what, I can come down a little bit on price and I can sell you 900 of them. And now for 900 of them at a little lower price. Again, the idea is that it gives you the opportunity to come in here and manipulate the information. So I can come in here and say, all right, what do I need to do to my gross profit margin percentage in order to make this deal work? Because I know he can only spend $18,000. So that's what scenario 4 does. Scenario 4 lets me do the same thing as scenario 3, but in terms of the profit margin percentage instead of the profit in terms of dollars. Let's reset S4. And let's look at scenario 5 and see what scenario 5 lets me do. Scenario 5, in this scenario, you want to play around with the different total sales and profit margins to see the impact on the quantity you can sell. So here we're going to be changing the quantity the quantity that we sell is going to change based on how we manipulate the either cost per unit, the total selling price, or the gross profit margin. For example, if I can negotiate a lower cost per unit, look what happens. I can sell more of them. So I can tell him, you know what, I've got a deal for you. If you can come to the 20,000, I can sell you 1,250 of them. If you can get your budget up by $2,000. That's one way to look at it. I can reset this now and look at it differently, and we've already seen I can change the selling price to 18,000, obviously, just straight up make it match his budget. That tells me I can only sell him 900 of them. So then I just go back to him and say, look, for $18,000, I can sell you 900. I can't afford to go down on my price. And obviously you wouldn't necessarily tell him this, but if you're telling him that, it's because the thinking in your mind is that I need to make at least 50% on this because I know I need that much to cover all my overhead, the time I've put in, etc., etc. Or I can say, all right, I'm willing to come down. I'm willing to make less of it. I need to make the budget be 18,000. Now I need to go to my gross profit margin, and let's say I want to make it 45%. Let's say I'm willing to do that. Well, I'm almost there. I can sell him 990 for that. So 44%, I'm there. I can sell them, 1,008 of them if I'm willing to come down to 44% and only make $7,920. So these are the 5 scenarios that you've seen, and the idea again is to be able to really analyze your product lines and hit it from every possible different angle to determine how can I bring these numbers together to make the deal work. This is the perfect product for you if you have a lot of situations where you have customers who are placing large orders and you want to manipulate the different aspects, whether it's quantity, cost per unit, selling price per unit, the total selling price, the gross profit margin in terms of dollars or percentage. Any of those things you can manipulate. I don't give the opportunity in any scenario to change the markup because the gross profit margin is going to have the same impact on the markup. It's just looking at it from a different angle. So by changing the gross profit margin, you're always changing the markup. The two are kind of tied in. So again, the idea is to go through here and be able to manipulate this information to make the deal work. I originally designed this for a guy who sold promotional products. And we did it because anytime somebody calls him up, it's a different deal. They want different groups of products, and this way he can take a whole list of groups of products here and do this for 20 products, and based on this, he could put a whole order together using this template. So that's the idea behind this, and this serves as your tutorial. As always, I'm available to answer any questions you might have. Just email me, Seth@nerdenterprises.com. And any questions you have, I'm available for private one-on-one training if you want to really spend some time with me going through this. If you want to learn how to design something like this in Excel, I can teach you how to do that. So give me a call at 866-945-8070. The template is available in my Knowledge Center. You will find it under Excel templates. Just come over here to nerdenterprises.com/knowledge and choose Excel templates, and you will see this product in there. And you can purchase it for download and you can start working with it right away. So again, if you have any questions, email Seth@nerdenterprises.com. If you want to go a little further with this in some way, shape, or form, then give me a call, 866-945-8070. As always, I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the web.